محمد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. عظم الله أجوركم. Please recite a Fatiha for all your marhumin. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين. نحمده ونستغفره ونتوب إليه، ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه وخاتم رسله النبي المؤيد والرسول الأمجد أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل الساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. وامن علينا برضاه وابن علينا برضاه وامن علينا برضاه. اللهم وفقنا بما تحب وترضى ببركة الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. The topic of living in the West as immigrant Muslims, who some of us have been in these countries for multiple generations, has become somewhat of a sensitive and important topic. And we hear a variety of different opinions in this field, and it may have caused some confusion, it may have caused some conflict and debate. The hope of tonight is to illustrate a realistic perspective on this important topic as it relates to the very livelihood, the very futures we have in these states, in these countries, in these lands. So it is important not to approach this issue emotionally. It is very important to approach this issue with a calm, rational mind and with a recourse to the fiqh, most important of all. I find that most of the conversation that takes place in this space usually falls in between two extremes. There is the first extreme, whom I call the naive optimist, and on the right, on the other extreme, you find people who I call dogmatic pessimists. Who's the naive optimist? The naive optimist is the individual who thinks that living in the West is pretty much similar and equal to living in a Muslim land. It is ultimately up to you to be a good Muslim. The fate of your spirituality, the fate of your salvation is entirely up to you and you only. You could be in the heart of Toronto, or Toronto, I have to say it correctly. You could be in the heart of Toronto and you could be the closest of individuals to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you could be in the vicinity of Imam al-Hussein in Karbala, Imam Ali in Najaf, in Qom, Mashhad, wherever it may be, and you may be the furthest of individuals from God and the religion. And although this is theoretically true, it misses one important factor when it comes to our journeys towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is that we are the product of our environments. Our minds do not function in vacuums. We think, we breathe, we grow, we function as response to the stimuli, to the events, to the people, to the social structures that are present within our communities. Yes, it is theoretically true, and only theoretically so, that if you were a strong Muslim, and if you are someone who dictates the wave of community, you are that strong, then yes, wherever you are, you will be the person who will be creating the wave. You will be the person who will be dictating the momentum of society. But how many of us are of the caliber of prophets? I don't think that applies to all of us. So the naive optimist is naive in this sense. There is an optimism built on a naivism. And the root cause to this are two. There are two root causes. The first is an attachment to the lifestyles we have, in the sense that we, after being here after a generation, 2, 3, what have you, we have been raised here. We have been accustomed to the life here, to the conveniences, to the comforts. I remember once upon returning to Qom, someone asked me how my break was after I had visited Australia. And I told him I really enjoyed my time. And this brother was on the camp that really thinks, you know, the West is bad and evil. And he was quite shocked. It's like, what do you mean you enjoyed your time? Surely it's the land of disbelievers. How could you even use such a description? I told him this is where I grew up. I have attachments to this place. Yes, sure, the society, the cultural norms, these things are not to my favor. They're not the way I want it to be ideally. But at the end of the day, I spent a long time of my growing up phase in this land and the community and the people. I have emotional attachments to this land, and it's very normal. Yes, majority of this land are not Muslims, but it is at the end of the day a land of God. We said, Ardullah, this is the land of God, and all blessings belong to the mu'mineen, to the believers. So it is very normal for us to have attachments and love and affinity to these places. We have grown up here. We are human beings. We are creatures of attachment. We are creatures of affinity. However, this is what causes the problem sometimes. We begin to envisage our futures here. We're talking about the naive optimist. He has, and most of us have, and this is realistic and only expected, we see these places as home, and they become our homes. We see our futures in this place, right? So it is very antithetical to idea of a home, which is supposed to be a safe abode. It's a place where you find comfort, security, for that to be a breeding ground for venomous snakes ready to rob you of your spirituality, ready to take you away from God. The idea doesn't match, right? Imagine there's a place you call home, and in that very place, you have venomous creatures and snakes ready to attack you at every chance. So at the very, very deep subconscious level, because we have identified and defined these places as home, it is confronting. It is attacking to think that this place could be the reason why I will not find salvation in the hereafter. So there is an emotional subconscious element to this. But we have to just become aware of it. Like I said, there is no problem in having this kind of subconscious attachment and emotional attachment to these lands. It's becoming aware of what it can cause. And for a group of us, it can cause this delusion that living in the West is very similar to living in a Muslim land. The second root cause for why a naive optimist exists is because it requires hard work to be a functioning, successful, spiritual, knowledgeable, intellectual Muslim in the West. You know why? Because once you live here and you are grown up here, naturally, like we said, you are going to have goals, you are going to have objectives, you are going to create a worldview for yourself, a future for yourself. And we know the nature of this world, these societies are such that they drown you in, they drag you in. For you to be successful, you have to do a lot of work. And it is the nature of the dunya, and it is the nature of these parts of the world that have the dunya manifested in the best ways possible, and you have to give it to them for that. They have it manifested in the best way possible. It's going to demand a lot of energy from you. You fall into this cycle of having certain expectations. You achieve those expectations, those goals. The next one is created. The next one is created. This is how these societies are designed. I'm not saying this is how we necessarily live, but this is how the societies are designed. A consumerist capitalist society cannot be anything but that. They are always tempting you with the next carrot. You are always chasing the next bait. So, and you always need to be working harder and harder to achieve the next financial materialistic goal. Now, living here, surviving here, and trying to be successful here in all the domains that is required of us, or in all the domains that is propagated for us to be so, imagine someone tells you, you also need to work on your religion extra hard to keep it functioning and sustaining. That is already difficult. Imagine you have a full plate, you're busy 7 days a week with family, with commitments, with work, with study, and someone here is preaching to you that, hey, my friend, if you do not also work twice as hard, if not more, to keep your religion, you are going to lose it. Of course, you're going to say no. Because deep in our minds, deep in the minds, there is this idea that that cannot be the case. Can you please put the volume up a bit, please? Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. To paint this picture very clearly, I use this analogy. I believe as Muslims living in the West, we are swimming against the current of capitalism, against the idols of liberalism, feminism, and what have you, all the isms. For you to be able to hold your faith, and of course, these ideas and these ideologies are quite contrary to what we believe as Muslims. We do not believe in capitalism and money functioning as the center of society, as the very pillar of society, of course. Many of these modern idols are not something that the Muslim will want to bow to. And for him to be upright, for him to hold his religion in an upright manner, he has to say no. To say no, he has to go against this strong current. To swim against an upward current that is coming right at you is something very difficult to do. Yes? However, a naive optimist, because this requires work, will ignore that, say, no, that's not the case, brother. Why are you saying that? If you really, really wanted to, it is all up to you. It's about your heart. It's about your iman. He does not want to do the extra work. So he says, look, firstly, it's the same. It's not too different, and he will bring you some justifications for that. And secondly, because he does not want to do the work, he would say, no, it's fine. The people are very peaceful here. I think we can, alhamdulillah, we have our communities. I go to my church every week, the center, you know. Even the Muslim tradition of coming to the mosque becomes a weekly tradition as opposed to being a daily tradition. Unfortunately, more applicable to our Shia communities than our Sunni brothers, who, inshallah, that is the case, although I hope our Shia communities here have daily prayers and daily programs. But the Muslim tradition is a daily one, not a weekly one, not a weekend tradition. Nonetheless, this is the problem with naive optimist. He thinks ultimately there is no difference between Bilad al-Kufr, the lands that Muslim does not, that the Islamic way of life does not reign strong, to the ones that do. This is one extreme. The other extreme is who I call the dogmatic pessimist. He is dogmatic because he thinks his understanding of the West is the only correct one. He requires a large exodus. He wants a reverse migration to happen for each individual. There is a binary decision already made in his mind that if you are breathing in these grounds, then you are helping and advocating for the taghut, for the transgressors. There is no other view to have. Everyone should follow the opinion he has about the West. So he's dogmatic in this sense. He's not accepting of a conversation. He's not accepting of a different point of view. He's also a pessimist because he cannot see the contribution that the Western society has made to humanity. And I say that, okay? Yes, the Western history is full of dark pages, and right now making these comments is very difficult. It's very difficult to defend the Western civilization when the powers that are orchestrating these atrocities around the world are not giving me much help here, right? But you have to state the facts as it is. Yes, they have stolen our scholarly heritage in the worst ways of possible, but they have also advanced the frontiers of science and technology. They have tried, even if it is for an evil cause. What do I mean by that? Even if it is to keep the masses quiet, they have designed a society where they give them a generally minimum level or above minimum level welfare, resources, happiness, freedom that keeps them happy and silent. Even if the motivations behind this is evil and for the governments to control the masses, no problem. There is a system that works that keeps, in most of the modern countries, I'm not saying all of them, of course, Toronto would be one of them, Canada would be one of them, They try to keep the living standard at a relatively high level that the masses are happy. You are not complaining about electricity outages, that the water not being clean, so on and so forth, in comparison to some of the countries in Middle East, Africa, or otherwise. This is day and light. If someone has lived in both of these places, you cannot be that pessimistic to say this is not something good. There is comfort here. They have worked on convenience and making sure the people are happy. Yes, even if that comes at the cost of them being in a hamster in a wheel. Yes, we are aware of that. But you have to give them what the positives and the contributions they have made to humanity as a whole. But a pessimist does not want to see that. Either because anything that is produced by Western societies is evil, like that could be an ideology, and that is an ideology, that even if something looks good, but because it is produced by the Western way of thinking, then it is evil. That's sometimes the justification. The other justification is, well, look at what they did with these contributions that you are so proudly supporting and speaking of. The technologies they are using to bomb kids, the science they are using to invade lands. They are using their science and technology to infest the minds with all this corruption. Yes? There is an argument to be made, but the pessimist likes to only look at the dark side. Whereas we know, tangibly living in these lands, we feel the positives in these lands. We know, otherwise we would not be staying here, correct? There is something to be gained, and there's a lot to be gained in our lifestyles in living in these countries that you perhaps would not find in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in Iran, in other parts of the world. And like I said, they have a tendency to issue blanket statements and oversimplify matters for everyone, right? Everyone has to follow his understanding of the West. Everyone has to follow his assessment of what needs to be done. So what do you do in this space when everyone is presenting an opinion and everyone has an assessment of the situation? Someone is falling on the other side. He does not see the current that is drowning him in immorality, in corruption. And the other is completely denying the positives that this society has and is issuing blanket statements. In situations like this, when it especially goes back to critical matters of your life, practical matters of your life, you go back to fiqh. That's the very, very function of fiqh, jurisprudence. What our maraji' say here. It's very important. When you go on the website of Sayyid al-Sistani Dam Dhilluhu Sharif, you will see his fatwa in this regard. And he has 3 different fatwas here. He has a fatwa of recommendation. The fatwa, when you go on this topic, it begins with a recommendation of living in non-Muslim lands. And he has its conditions. Then the second part of the fatwa is about the permissibility of living in non-Muslim lands. And the final part of this fatwa is about the prohibition of living in Muslim lands. I'm going to just briefly read over this so you have an idea what this blessed man has said. He says, it is recommended for a believer, mustahab, for a believer to travel to non-Islamic countries for the purpose of spreading the religion and its teachings and to convey them, provided that they can ensure the safety of their own faith and the faith of their young children from being compromised. The fatwa of recommendation. It is permissible, the second fatwa, for a believer to travel to non-Islamic countries if they are certain or confident that the journey will not negatively affect their faith or the faith of those who are connected to them. The second fatwa was one of permissibility, or what we call in Arabic jawaz. And the third fatwa, however, it is forbidden to travel to non-Islamic countries regardless of where they are, whether in the East or the West, if such travel results in a decrease in the Muslim's faith. This deficiency in faith is realized by abandoning obligatory acts or committing prohibited acts, provided, so this prohibition has a condition, provided that returning back or leaving these lands does not lead to death. So if you were to go back to wherever you came from, you'll be at the threat of death. Or you'll be placed in extreme hardship, such as the hardship, we call this in fiqh, darar, harm. Most ahkam, most rulings will be lifted if, and most I'm talking about compulsory ahkam, not mustahabbat, things that are ordained for you, will be lifted if you are placed in situations and circumstances of extreme hardship. The classic case of that you all know, and it's been mentioned in the Quran. For example, to survive in an area where there is no other food or drink except wine, for example, it becomes wajib for you to drink the wine to survive. Not only permissible, but wajib for you to drink the wine so that you could survive, okay? Because it's an extreme circumstance. So the D Sayyid here, may Allah prolong his life, is saying that this fatwa of hurma, of prohibition of living in these lands, applies when there is no threat of going back to your countries. Sorry, when there is a threat of going back to your countries, or implies extreme hardship. Let me open this up a bit more, each of the fatwa. The first is one of recommendation. The Sayyid said, we go and teach the religion and convey the message and so on and so forth. What's the initial image that comes to your mind? Someone like me, yes? Someone like me sitting on the minbar and preaching the faith, teaching the children, so on and so forth. But it is not limited to that. Okay, when the Sayyid says someone goes for the purpose of conveying the teachings, it is not limited to someone who is a speaker, someone who is a scholar, someone who is a graduate from the Hawza. This is inclusive of everyone. I'm going to read you a beautiful hadith from Imam As-Sadiq. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The companion tells Imam As-Sadiq, I enter the lands of disbelief. These countries like the ones we are living in. And there are those amongst our companions, so because he frequents and he lives there, some of the companions, other companions, told him that if you stay in these lands and you die here, you'll be resurrected with the kuffar. And that's not good, right? You want to be resurrected with the mu'mineen, with the believers on Yawm al-Qiyamah. You don't want to be resurrected as a group of, for example, Christians, when all your life you've been beating your chest for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and praying 5 times a day. So the other companions, the friends of this man, are telling him, look, you are going to Bilad al-Kufr, you are going to these lands, you are going to be resurrected with the non-Muslims. So he is fearful, and he is like, okay, if this is the case, maybe I should not travel. So he tells the Imam about the situation. The Imam tells him, oh Hammad, when you are there, do you remember our cause and call others to it? I said yes. So when he is in non-Muslim lands, he's calling to Islam, he's calling to the Ahlul Bayt. The Imam continues with a follow-up question. When you are in these cities, yani the cities of Islam, do you remember our cause and call others to it? He said no. So when, for example, he is in Medina, because of the difficult circumstances of Medina, Medina was always difficult for the Ahlul Bayt, by the way, okay? And he cannot call on to the Ahlul Bayt or Islam or be as free as he is. But when he travels outside of Medina, goes to non-Muslim lands, he's able to preach the message of Ahlul Bayt. He's able to speak about the Quran. So the Imam tells him, if you die there, you will be resurrected as a nation, as a ummah, yourself. And your light will shine before you. تحشر أمة وحدك ويسعى نورك بين يديك. What a beautiful description. This description of being raised as a ummah, what does it remind you of? The description that God has given one very important prophet, Ibrahim. Peace be upon him. Salamullahi alayhi. Please recite a salawat. It is very clear that this companion is not spending the entirety of his time while he is in these lands of disbelievers, Bilad al-Kufr, as going door to door doing da'wah. He's not doing that. He's living there, but as a part of his life, incorporated into his routine, there is time dedicated to calling people onto the faith, be it by his speech or by his actions. There is a time, there is effort, there's a struggle dedicated as a part of his day in calling people to the message. However, he's living there as a normal human being. He did not say, I'm an alim, I go there to there and I call them and I go up, stand on the podium and say, oh kuffar, come to my religion. No. He's living there as a normal human being. This goes to show us this fatwa of istihbab, of recommendation of living to these lands is applicable to all of us like this companion. And he has so much thawab, that the Imam is comparing him to Ibrahim. The beautiful verses that our dear Sayyid just recited, and mashallah, what a beautiful recitation. Inna Ibrahima kana ummatan. Ibrahim on his own was an entire community, an entire nation. Qanitan lillah, obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hanifan, always inclining to the truth. Walam yaku min al-mushrikeen. And he never disbelieved, he never associated partners with Allah. You and I, in these lands, have an opportunity to become like Ibrahim. And that is a great opportunity. See, even this companion did not have this opportunity in the land that the Imam used to live in. He says, are you able to do what you do in those lands, in the land that I am with you? He's like, no, I can't do that. My life, for example, would be at risk. Or any other set of reasons. Or maybe, by the way, sometimes this happens. When you go back to Junub, when you go back to Bururi, Mariabad, when you go back to Qom, you're like, yeah, people are taking care of these matters, right? There's, mashallah, enough scholars, there's enough mu'mineen. Why do I need to go and work on these things? But when you come here, you feel like, oh, okay. All of us feel like we could be a representative of the religion. Every sister that wears the scarf automatically feels, whether you like it or not, when you're surrounded by a majority non-Muslim population, automatically you are going to feel like you are representing the faith. Whereas if you are mixing in the crowd in Lebanon, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, what have you, you're just another number, you're just another figure. You're with the crowd. But here, automatically, everything you do becomes a message. Everything you do becomes a representation. So, living in these countries has the opportunity of becoming someone like Ibrahim. The champion of Tawheed, the champion of calling people to God. That opportunity is there. In a hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he told, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Brothers, can you please, if you get up so I could see your beautiful faces up front, I would appreciate that. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. ثانيا على حب فاطمة. We all can become an Ibrahim. And the reason for this is obvious. The reason for this is obvious. If Rasulullah tells Imam Ali alayhi salam, you look so much better up close, by the way, thank you. Rasulullah tells Imam Ali alayhi salam that if you guide one person to the path, it is better than everything that the sun shines when it rises from the east. You know, it's an expression to exaggerate the reality of the matter, of how much thawab there is for something like this. And these lands are full of such opportunities. And the reason for this is obvious. It's because of the difficulty of the matter. You know how I gave you an analogy earlier about living in these countries, these societies, and being a successful Muslim requires you to swim upwards a downward current. Yeah? So if you are someone who is becoming like Ibrahim, not only you are only yourself swimming upwards, you are trying to save someone else as well. That takes a lot of energy. That takes a lot of work and effort. So that's why you become like Ibrahim. This is no exaggeration. When the Imam says you become a community, do not fear that you are going to be resurrected amongst the believers. No, you will create your own community. There's a reality to this because of the hard work that it requires. But this very hard work that it requires is a wake-up call. Are we all falling into this recommendation category or not? So let me move into the second and third part of the fatwa, which is the prohibition and the permissibility. The Sayyid said it is only permissible to live in these lands if you have no fear of losing your faith or those that are under your responsibility, your children, your associates. See, some of us sometimes have this wrong misconception that, oh, it's only my faith. No, the Sayyid is saying fiqhan, not akhlaqan. There's a difference. Yes, of course, as a parent, you are automatically going to feel the need to want your children to be guided. That is obvious. That is in your instinct. That is in your blood. But no, there's a fiqhi ruling that the future of your children and their faith depends on your decision. That's the first part to bear in mind. The second part to bear in mind is this deficiency in faith. The Sayyid beautifully described it. It comes in two dimensions. Firstly, it's in the realm of ideology. If you, by living here, by being exposed to the culture, the TV, the people, the lifestyle, having specific kind of friends, so on and so forth, your faith in Allah, the Quran, the Prophet, and the Ahlul Bayt weakens, that's a warning sign. That's the first. Maybe after you attended a lecture on biology, now you think, wait, maybe we are from chimpanzees and God did not do anything to create us. Maybe Adam alayhi salam, by the way, I've done extensive research on this, so it's not something that I'm talking out of my pocket, right? Maybe you start to doubt the Quran verbatim, that maybe the Quran is all metaphors. These stories are not really true, because that's what it is. And these are the justifications we hear for the Bible, right? Whenever it confronts and contradicts science. Maybe when you are speaking to your non-Muslim friends, you hear about certain things about Rasulullah, and because you are so busy in your life, you never bother to go and look up the answers. And that misconception and that fault that someone mentioned, you know, the attack that they launched on Rasulullah stays with you. Or about Imam al-Hussein. And then you come to the majalis or you pray and you feel it. It's there, it's lingering. And you do absolutely nothing about it. That's a deficiency in faith because of living here. The other aspect to which the Sayyid points out here is deficiency in performing your obligations. Has my salat been affected? Has my fasting been affected? Paying khums, has it been affected? Performing my obligation of hijab, has it been affected? Have I become lenient in some areas of my life? Has performing haram become a bit more easier for me because everyone else is doing it? See, there's a reality to it. The permissibility and the prohibition of staying in these lands depends on this. The beauty of this ruling, and this is where I want to respond to the dogmatic pessimist, is that the beauty of this fatwa, and like any other fatwa, is that each person has to do this assessment on their own. You are not allowed to pass a judgment for someone else's faith. You are not allowed to pass a judgment and do an assessment for how his life is. Yes, you have to, if someone does not know this fatwa, so if someone does not know this ruling, you have an obligation to tell them about this. Hey, this is the reality of the matter. Are you aware of this? But for you, especially to say this for everybody categorically, if you are living in the West, you're supporting, for example, the Taghut, something like that, right? From a fiqh perspective, yes, we're speaking about fiqh. That's a very bold claim to make. The nature of fiqh is that the faqih, the jurist, issues out the ruling, and every mukallaf, every muqallid applies it to his circumstances. And it's interesting, sometimes you see the opposite. We're used to, you know, people issuing out blanket statements about everyone should do a reverse migration. Okay, that's problematic. Let everyone decide for themselves if this falls into their life. But I've seen the opposite as well personally. I have seen people being blamed for migrating. That completely surprised me. Judging the person who migrated with his family as having weak faith. Ya Allah. Yeah, clearly he was very weak. He couldn't survive in these environments, so he had to take his kids and his family back to the Middle East, for example. What kind of thinking is that? So according to this brother, the litmus test for faith is to survive in the West, not to sin against God. No. You have to be able to survive here to be a true Muslim. Who said this? If this person feels in his life that yes, he will lose his faith and he will lose the faith of his children and they will not be able to adhere to the obligations, they will not be able to adhere to the prohibitions, who are you to tell him no? Who are you to criticize him? In fact, maybe he's scared of the following verse. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ تَوَفَّاهُمُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ, those who the angels take their life. In what state? ظَالِمِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. They are in a state of wrongdoing. Okay? The angels are taking their lives and they're in a state of dhulm. Dhulm to themselves, not someone else. ظَالِمِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. قَالُوا فِيمَ كُنْتُمْ. The angels tell them, where were you? Why are you in such a state? What's happened to you? Why do you look like this? I thought I was taking the life of a Christian. Who are you? You're a Muslim, follower of Imam Ali? Really? You look like this? This is how you start your day? I've been following you, trying to find the right opportunity to take your life. I was told to take the life of a Muslim. What am I seeing? فِيمَ كُنْتُمْ. Where were you? Why are you in such a state? This individual says, قَالُوا كُنَّا مُسْتَضْعَفِينَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. We were weakened. Yes, you see the state I am at. I am not praying. I am not performing my obligations. My faith had become weakened. It's not my fault. كُنَّا مُسْتَضْعَفِينَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. We were weakened. We were oppressed. They put a lot of pressure on us. I had to provide for my family. I could not spend enough time to learn the religion. I could not put enough time to take them to class. So on and so forth. The angels tell them, قَالُوا أَلَمْ تَكُنْ أَرْضُ اللَّهِ وَاسِعًا. Were the lands of God not spacious enough for you to go and migrate there? فَتُهَاجِرُ فِيهَا. So you could migrate? This is the conversation that the angels will have with some individuals. And because the final part of this verse is very scary. فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَأْوَاهُمْ جَهَنَّمْ. Their end, the end of their journey is Jahannam. وَسَاءَتْ مَصِيرًا. And it's such a bad ending. If someone reads this verse and has understood the fatwa, he's not passing judgment on others, right? He feels like he's not falling into the recommendation category. Ya akhi, I'm spending from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. trying to provide for the family. I come home smashed, right? I have a meal, I go back to sleep, I don't repeat. What recommendation? What are you talking about, right? I'm saying this person feels that way. He does not see any part of his life doing something for the message, for the cause. And his children, he's not spending enough time with them. He sees that he's losing them as well to the education system, to social media. And he reads this verse one night, he's like, man, I don't want to be this person. I don't want the angel to tell me, فِيمَ كُنْتُمْ. Where were you? What's happened to you? I thought you had good origins. I thought the blood of Ali ran in you. What's going on? So if someone feels this and has the courage and has the determination to move lands, that's not easy. To move entire countries, move his life to another part of the world, and then someone else comes and ridicules him. Oh, your faith is weak. Are you serious? So just like it is wrong, say this person who wanted to move with his family now comes and flaunts to everyone and says, hey, all of you should do this. What is wrong with you? You've all become corrupt, fasideen. You have no backbone. Where is your spine? He starts speaking like this to people. That's wrong according to the fatwa. Every person should do the assessment themselves. But this individual can also not be the subject of abuse for taking such a bold move, for being so brave, for abandoning the future maybe he built as a teenager, for the hopes he had in these countries as a teenager, because he wants to hold on to his religion. So both sides need to be very important. I need to make an important point here, okay, about this idea of assessment and judgment and in being personal. Sometimes you will find individuals, and this is necessary, like myself and otherwise, right? They will come and speak about the ills of these countries, ills of the Western civilization. MashaAllah, we're seeing a lot nowadays, right? And there's a lot in front of our faces. This is also needed, right? Don't always misinterpret someone who comes and talks in a general sense about these lands as someone who's issuing a blanket statement. I don't want this to be misunderstood. We have a lot of respected individuals and scholars who take it upon themselves to wake up the masses. Because some of us are in sleep. Some of us are dreaming. We're still living in the hubbly-bubbly world of naive optimism. Khub, you need someone to give you a slap sometimes, ya akhi. That needs to happen. All of us need that individual to shake us and say, hey, wake up. Do you know where you are? You're surrounded by fire. Are you just going to comfortably sleep and not going to do anything about the burning that's taking down Your house is collapsing and you're not going to do anything. If so, someone uses an exaggerate form of language on the member and otherwise in hopes of waking up the community, you can't blame them, right? You can't blame them. In particular, because we all have this obligation, by the way. You know, all of you, if you have close brothers and sisters and your children or you yourself have went through some difficulty, you nudge your brother or sister, hey, this part of life is difficult. If you do this course in university, you'll be facing this problem. If you go to this institution, there is that challenge. We all do this. So if a scholar comes and talks about it in a more general sense, let's not be harsh towards them. They have a duty, especially some of our scholars who are from these communities, who spend a lot of time dealing with people's problems. They see all the problems that the community is having. Familial problems, social problems, personal problems, addictions, drug abuse, the problems in school, university, relationships, so on and so forth. Ya akhi, he sees this for so long. Every day from the morning, every Hawza student that leaves the Hawza, in his mind, he has this thought, I'm going to go, inshallah, teach them Aqidah, teach them history, teach them about their religion, advanced topics, inshallah. He comes from the morning until night, he has to deal with family problems. He has to deal with social problems. He has to deal with corruptions, drug abuse, pornography abuse. You have to give a haqq for this person to have an assessment. It's like, brother, I have been in these communities for 10 years, right? I can see, yes, theoretically speaking, everyone should make a judgment. But in my particular community, I feel the need to say that people are not equipping themselves with enough to swim against the current. Hope it's fair. Even if he attacks us, even if he attacks the way we see life here, he's just doing his duty. But theoretically speaking, you are not that kind of audience. You are intelligible. You are, mashallah, rational, mature. This is why I'm giving you the principle. There's no need for someone to tell you, hey, all of you need to go back, or hey, you need to do that. All of us understand our circumstances, the intricacies of our circumstances, whether going back causes more problems for us or not. Sometimes that's the case. Who said going back is going to solve all your problems, right? That's a question that needs to be addressed. So every person at the end of the day needs to perform a self-assessment. Let's not pass judgments. But if a person of influence and experience in this community says something, there is some weight to it. He's seen something. He spent some time. He has a conclusion to give. He has some advice to give. So let's be fair on both sides. Speaking of, if going back is always the best problem, the best solution, a point that is, point of difference between these communities and Muslim communities is the obvious cultural difference, yes? Like whether you like it, even if the country is ruled by a secular government, it's not a theocracy like Iran, for example, or apparently Taliban in Afghanistan, or some other countries, right? Pakistan, I think, is an Islamic country as well, right? The constitution. It's not, the government, at least formally, is not labeled Islamic, but the culture is Muslim. Right? People, generation after generation, have been living with this way of life. You hear the call of the adhan, you go to salat, when it's Ashura, you feel everyone is mourning. When it's Ramadan, everyone is inshallah fasting. The vibe is there. So that's an obvious difference. No one can deny that. But there is something that is similar between here and there, and that is the role of social media. Right? We live in two worlds. We live in the outside world, and we can see how the outside world affects us. But there is a virtual world as well that has become as real as the physical world. And this is sometimes a factor that gets missed in the calculations that some people, when they pass judgments, they ignore this fact. We have seen, I don't know if you have seen, sometimes we have seen people from very elite religious families go the wrong way. The father could be a very important scholar, and the son could be doing X, Y, and Z. The daughter could be doing X, Y, and Z. It's not necessarily the fault of the father, and I'm talking about in the Muslim countries. But there's a reality about the role and influence of social media, right? This factor is preserved, and this is, by the way, a mistake that happens with some families that migrate. They think, okay, we did the hard yard of, by the way, apparently hard yard is not a word you guys use, okay? You took what should I say, man? You KO'd me now. You took the difficult step, does that work? Of moving to that country. So it's like when parents put their kids in Muslim schools, like, that's it, it's over, right? Similarly, sometimes some families that move overseas, and I've seen this, once they move overseas, they realize, okay, I've done the hard thing, therefore the rest of it is going to be fine. And then you find even their kids are deviating from the path. Why? Because you still need a program against the evils and the dangers of social media. So this is, painting a realistic landscape of the situation. And I hope that's the case. I hope that what you received was a realistic picture of what's going on. We don't want to be a naive optimist, right? And we don't want to be a dogmatic pessimist. We want to be somewhere in the middle, following the fiqh and being honest to ourselves and to our salvation. But what can we do, given that we are in these lands, and what are some ways to test whether our stay in these lands, la samahallah, God forbid, does not fall in the wrong category? Some of the practical things we have to always bear in mind is, the first thing is education, the most obvious, right? I'm talking about a personal level. We have a hadith that mentioned by a few of our infallibles, that every person, every Muslim should spend a part of their week. Kullu jumu'atin, they say. Jumu'ah in Arabic either means Friday or means every week, okay? A part of their week, one day in the week, a part of the day in a week, learning about their religion. A program, a dedicated program to learning about their religion. How many of us have access to scholars or not? Some of our brothers and sisters decide to live in remote communities, that there are no Muslims. I feel like that could be a problem. Intentionally deciding to move away from the Muslim community is intentionally making the problem even more difficult. You are cutting your access to these beautiful places. You are cutting access to Muslim communities, to Muslim scholars who can provide education. If someone is in such places, are they replacing the deficiency they are seeing in terms of community, in terms of resources, by having a dedicated program every week in educating themselves, right? The most basic of things, ahkam, right? All of us have an obligation to learn our religious rulings. How many of us do that? Our theology, our aqidah. We're living in societies, like I said, that they're infesting our minds. How much time are we spending in addressing these shubahat, these misconceptions? Like I said, these misconceptions become venomous snakes that slowly chip away at your soul. And after a year or so, you realize you're not the same person. You do not have the same faith. You do not come to the majalis of Aba Abdullah and cry in the same way and feel emotionally in the same way. It happens if you ignore these misconceptions and these objections and these things, launched at you by the opposing side. Education is very important. It's the building block. If we do not have that, then it's not going to. We are lacking somewhere. We have to be honest with ourselves. The second part, and in the previous part, I wanted to really emphasize on having a connection to a community, okay? Especially a scholar. Inshallah, if you are blessed with a scholar, please don't limit yourself to one community because you're Lebanese, Pakistani, Afghan. Who cares about these titles? We are all Shia, for God's sake. We are all Shia. We are all Muslimin. If there is someone valuable in a community, please go and seek them out, right? We'll be questioned for not seeking out this individual. The second item that I want to speak about is the spirituality item, especially through the lens of rituals. I have personally experienced this because I spend most of the year in a place like Qom, right? And I'm filled around with spirituality, with this aura of Sayyidah Ma'sooma, salamullahi alayha. And these scholars, this beautiful mu'mineen, it's there, right? You feel it. The only way I personally feel that I can keep a percentage of that when I'm away from that is sticking strong to my rituals, right? Spiritually, not at the level of the heart, oh, I love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I love the Prophet, I love Imam Hussein, I come to these money. No. Being very, very serious about these rituals. Now, rituals have two aspects. They have a first aspect, which is they act as an anchor, right? Every time you perform salat, every time you go to a corner and you remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you reset yourself. What is that beautiful hadith of Rasulullah that mentioned that praying is like performing ghusl every time for your soul? Imagine performing ghusl 5 times a day and freeing yourself from the deficiencies and the pollutions that the soul has absorbed. Inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar, right? It prevents fahsha, indecencies and wrongdoing. It acts as an anchor. You know how you do those 5-minute meditations and suddenly your mind is clear? I'm not, comparing salat to meditation. It's just an analogy. Salat is far greater than any form of meditation. But it resets you. If you are caught in the noise of the world and the noise of your schedule, you need to anchor yourself back. I need to anchor myself back in salat. Having quality salat as a form of anchoring ourselves and as a form of spiritual reset and grounding ourselves. Rituals, honestly, should not be underestimated. There is an idea that in these societies, rituals are looked at as something simplistic, backward. Oh, you guys are doing this bowing up and down and so on and so forth. Do not be fooled by this. They are taking away one of our most critical weapons in defending ourselves. They're taking away one of our critical weapons in our journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salat and anchoring ourselves in rituals, even if you don't feel like it sometimes. It doesn't have to be the most, sophisticated of salat every time you cry, every time. No. It's a ritual. It's okay for it to be a ritual. Follow it with discipline. Follow it and let it become a mental association that this is forming a grounding experience for me. The second part of why spirituality through rituals is important is the fact that it's rhythmic, right? Because yes, you may ground yourself in one moment of coming back to prayer, but for true growth, long-term growth to come, it needs to be consistent. If there is fire continuously being thrown at you, right, you need this fire extinguisher every time to come and defend you. If there are arrows being thrown at you, you need this shield to always be coming for you. And it doesn't, reduce itself to salat only. Whatever these ritualistic obligations are, we all know about the beauty of the fast. Inshallah, this does not go down as me preaching something I don't practice myself. So I'm only mentioning this at a theoretical level. Inshallah, I am as good as you in practicing these things. Why do you think Rasulullah, by the way, fasted every week? Because he knew of this ritualistic aspect of fasting. Yes, there's the bodily aspect of it, but he resets and has this long-term effect of building us, becoming stronger, becoming like Ibrahim, becoming like people who can dictate the wave, who can set the trend wherever they go. They are not passive. In a classroom, in a community, in university, in their workforce, they are not passive. You become Ibrahim. At a young age, he was determining the fate of his community. And the third thing I want to mention about rituals is the importance of mustahabbat. Okay? Now, more often than not, usually what you hear is, brother, stick to your obligations, stick to your salat, stick to your, stay away from the haram. That is a major jihad. If we are truly able to do that, we'll be far ahead. We'll be saints, in all honesty. Sheikh Bahjat, rahmatullah alayhi, and this is not exclusive to him, this is an idea communicated. Sometimes when we mention the statements of these scholars, please don't let this be confused that this is something independent of the Ahlul Bayt, as somehow they have an instruction that has not reached us from the Ahlul Bayt. No, they are rephrasing the same teachings in a way that you and I understand. It's for the modern audience. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Please recite salawat. Subhanallah, God made me forget it, so maybe it's not. Sorry? Yeah, Sheikh Bahjat, but what about Sheikh Bahjat? Please recite a second salawat. The importance of mustahabbat. Yes. Sheikh Bahjat would say, anytime they would ask him for spiritual advice, he would say, do your wajibat and stay away from the haram and you will become the best of saints. This teaching is communicated, especially stay away from the haram, does a lot in our spirituality, because there's no corruption. Automatically, the default state of the soul is to be in line with the fitrah, right? And the fitrah, fitratullahi allati fatara an-nasa alayha. It is a mode of creation that points to God. It's a compass that points to God. So once you take away these magnets that confuse the compass, it will automatically point north, the north of God, the north of Tawheed. So staying away from the prohibitions, from the haramat, is a major step in not just being a standard Muslim, but being a very, very quality Muslim. But here is the point I want to add. Mustahabbat help us in performing our wajibat, right? You know how it is said that the nafila, the mustahab prayer you perform after your wajib prayer, covers and compensates for the deficiencies you may have had in Salat Maghrib, for example. You pray 2 rak'at after your Salat Maghrib, the wajib, the mustahab comes and takes care of the deficiencies in your Salat. In a moment of a lapse of attention, your Salat Maghrib loses that quality. You perform the mustahab to make up for it. Mustahabbat help the wajib. And I feel personally, mustahabbat such as reciting the Quran. Yani, I'm not asking for Jawshan Kabir every day or Abi Hamza Thumali, but something as like reading the Quran, which was the culture of every Muslim in early Muslims and the companions of the Ahlul Bayt. This is not really demanding something. The Quran, as we're talking about the Quran as a ritual, the Quran has an effect of reinforcing the Tawheedi worldview. How often do you open the Quran and you feel like sometimes every page sounds like the previous page is worded differently? Yeah, that's the very idea. To remind you that this whole thing is about God and Tawheed, right? Every page, every verse will hit you differently the next time you read it. It has that ritualistic aspect of strengthening the ideology, the heart. Al-Mustahabbat, some of these supplications do a lot. Honestly, they do a lot for our wajibat. They become the shield that allows us to have a very pure form of performing the wajibat. It's become long. I'll end with this. Sorry, this discussion is an important discussion. On the ninth night of Ashura, I've chosen to speak about this topic, A, to do it justice, and A, to do you justice as the audience. So you have a complete picture of this. So please bear with me as I end with this final point. What we have said until now had to do at the personal level. Yes, education, spirituality, ritual, so on and so forth. But there is something we all need to think about. I was having a conversation with the brothers last night, and we were talking about, on the back of the previous lecture, about business, entrepreneurship, and he was saying that we need to introduce people who are entrepreneurs to teach others to become entrepreneurs and successful business people. And I told him, Ya akhi, it's us who has to do it. Who else? It's us. It's our turn. We have to do it. There's no one else that's going to do it for us. As a community, when I say community, why I mentioned the story of the brother is because sometimes when we say, oh, this has to happen at the community level, we all think about, oh, the community leaders. We think about the uncles that are running the committee. No, ya akhi, the community is us. It's our community. As a community, there needs to be a shift towards building closed communities. What do I mean by that? This shouldn't be misinterpreted. I mean, we need to make our social structures indigenous to ourselves. That if the brother needs to go to school, he goes to a Shia school. If the brother needs to go to exercise or the sister needs to go to exercise, he goes to a Muslim gym. And it's for Muslimin, it's brothers and sisters separate. So on and so forth, to even creating, hopefully, inshallah, one day, we have universities at that level, right? We have universities that are, the brain power behind it is Muslims. If we want to live in these communities long term and be holding on to our religions, we as a community, not the uncles, we as a community need to think about a way of making our small communities Islamic as much as possible. The social infrastructures. Because as much as I try, because this whole debate was about the environment, right? The environments we expose ourselves. If we can try to replicate Muslim environments, social structures and infrastructures, I call them, in all the different forms that it comes, then we'll be successful as a community living here. That fear of losing our faith and not adhering to our obligations can be taken away. And this, by the way, sometimes I went to a city, and mashallah, it's one of the older cities in terms of having a Shia establishment. And all I saw was a heavy focus on events, right? That's all they thought it means to be a successful community. But no, it's grassroots work. Establishing the basis for a community. Schools, daycare centers, pension care centers, leisure centers. This is not, by the way, a proposal to become, like I said a few nights ago, like the Amish, to become completely separate from the outside society. There is a fine balance between being very successful, important Muslim Canadian citizens and creating environments that protects our faith, inshallah. I tried to tackle the different headings in the best way possible in the time I was given. May Allah accept from us, and may Allah accept from you. May Allah guide our hearts. May Allah protect our faith. May Allah protect our communities. May Allah give us the courage to make the right decisions, to spend time on our faith. This dua, of course, goes to me, for myself, before all of you. But inshallah, the mu'mineen have to believe, and the mu'mineen have to pray for one another. Tonight, for a few moments, I just want to reflect on Imam al-Hussein and Ali al-Asghar, because something happened with this part of the tragedy that did not happen anywhere else. You know, Ali al-Asghar is called the small Ali, yeah? You had Ali al-Akbar and Ali al-Awsat, Imam Zayn al-Abidin, and you have this young Ali, the smallest of Alis. But this Ali is the greatest hujjah of Imam Hussein. And I want to draw a comparison to what's happening in Gaza, right? The reason why Gaza can say that they are on the side of truth is all the children that are being slaughtered, right? Why do you think on October 7th, the first thing they said was the beheading of 40 babies? They had to create that false news so they can show they are on the side of truth. The proof why Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam is on the side of truth, if we had nothing else, we had Ali al-Asghar, an army that attacks a child cannot be on the side of the truth. Ali al-Asghar did service to the cause of Imam al-Hussein. He became the greatest hujjah, the greatest evidence, the greatest proof, the greatest of Alis for Imam al-Hussein. This is the role that Ali al-Asghar plays throughout history. He will be remembered as the reason, as the demarcator between truth and falsehood for the camp of Imam al-Hussein. When he held Ali al-Asghar on his hands, and he said, Ya Qawm, if you want to fight me, you want to fight the adults in this camp, you want to fight my companions, so be it. But what fault does this child have? What fault does this infant have? Before the Imam could even finish his speech, these arrows are not built for babies. It's not like they come in baby size and adult size. It's just one arrow. An arrow that was perhaps the very height of Ali al-Asghar took aim at the throat of Ali al-Asghar. The thing I wanted to mention, Imam al-Hussein is Waliullah. He's connected to Allah. It is very rare to find a Waliullah, someone that connected to God, to become confused. Yeah, it's very rare. But when the arrow went right through the throat of Ali al-Asghar and slaughtered him from E to E, Imam al-Hussein became confused for 1 second. Waliullah became confused. What do I do now? Do I take the arrow out because he's bleeding and dying? Or do I leave the arrow and let him also die too? Die in this way. Imam al-Hussein, imagine that single moment, the Imam of your time becomes confused as what to do. Salamullahi alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Salamullahi alayka ya Aba Abdullah. And on that heart, they became confused on that day. And he heard a call from the sky that leave him. He shall have a restful abode in the heavens. And Imam al-Hussein throws the blood into the air to say, Ya Allah, ridan bi ridak. I am happy with whatever you have decreed. You took my Ali al-Akbar. Here you can have Ali al-Asghar as well. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد منا لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. أعظم الله أجورنا بمصابنا بالحسين عليه السلام وجعلنا وإياكم من الطالبين بثاره مع وليه الإمام المهدي من آل محمد صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله صلى الله عليك وعلى آل بيتك المظلومين صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله يا غريب يا مظلوم كربلاء يا مسلوب الأمامة والرداء يا ذبيحا من الكفا يا جدا أشبه الناس بطه في البرية بارز الأعداء بروح حيدرية أرجع الأحقاد فيهم خيبرية كي يحامي عن الإمام العالمين. On the day of Ashura, Ali al-Akbar alayhi salam came forth. Imam Hussein saw him and understood the message. He was asking for permission to go and fight. The traditions say Imam alayhi salam gave him a special permission. He gave Ali al-Akbar a hopeless gaze, and the Imam began crying, Bunay Ali, ilayya ilay. أضمك وتضمني. When the women of the Ahl al-Bayt saw that Ali al-Akbar was about to leave, they surrounded Ali al-Akbar and said, Urham ghurbatana, have mercy upon us, for we are strangers in this land, and we cannot bear to be separated from you. Ali al-Akbar persisted at descending to the battlefield because he saw that his father was outnumbered and Abu Abdullah was in need of supporters. But before going, the tradition says Imam al-Hussein himself prepares Ali al-Akbar for battle. He places the helmet of Ali on his head. He places the armor of Ali on his body. He gives him a waistband that belonged to the commander of the faithful, Ali alayhi salam. He ties it around the waist of Ali. He helps him embark on his horse. Abu Abdullah lifted his head towards the sky. He gazed at the sky and said, Allahumma ashhad ala ha'ula'i al-qawm. فقد برز إليهم أشبه الناس برسولك محمد خلقا وخلقا ومنطقا. Oh Allah, witness what these people are doing. The Imam alayhi salam then and supplicated against his enemies. He called Umar bin Sa'd and said, "What is wrong with you? May Allah bereave you of your kindred, just as you have made me bereft of mine." Then the Imam alayhi salam read the verse, "Inna Allah astafa Adam wa Nuhan wa ala Ibrahim wa ala Imran ala al-alamin. ذرية بعضها من بعض والله سميع عليم." Before Ali al-Akbar alayhi salam descends, he bids farewell to his family members, his sisters, his aunts, his uncles, and as he descends, one of the enemies calls him. He tells him, "Ya Ali, you are related to the commander of the faithful, Yazid." The mother of Ali al-Akbar had familial relations. She was a relative to Yazid, la'anahullah. And so the enemy tells Ali al-Akbar, "Since you are related, we want to respect this relationship. We can grant you safety." What does Ali al-Akbar say? He says, "Our relationship to Rasulullah, our relationship to Rasulullah is second to none." And he charges at the enemy and recites, "Ana Ali ibn al-Husayn ibn Ali, نحن وراء رب البيت أولى بالنبي. تالله لا يحكم فينا تالله لا يحكم فينا ابن الدعي. أضرب بالسيف أحامي عن أبي ضرب غلام هاشمي كرشي. I swear by the Lord of the house, we are closer to Rasulullah. I strike you with the sword as I defend my father." And then the battle began. Ali al-Akbar was dominating the battlefield. At times he would attack the right flank, and at times he would attack the left. Meanwhile, Abu Abdullah is standing watching Ali al-Akbar, and Layla was inside her tent. She's watching the face of Imam al-Hussein. Abu Abdullah was rejoicing, but all of a sudden the face of Imam al-Hussein changes. Layla turns to him, "Sayyidi, has anything happened to my son Ali? I see that your face has changed." He tells her, "Ya Layla, no, he's still okay. However, right now he's facing a fierce opponent. He was facing Bikr bin Ghanim, who was extremely strong, and I fear for Ali. Ya Layla, turn to Allah and supplicate, for the supplication of a mother is answered." So Layla turns to Allah and supplicates, "Ilahi bi ghurbat al-Husayn, إلهي بعطش أبي عبد الله، يا راد يوسف إلى يعقوب، أردد إلي ولدي علي. Oh, you who brought Joseph back to Jacob, bring me back my son Ali. Ali al-Akbar alayhi salam was extremely thirsty. He had multiple wounds in his body. He came back to the tent saying to his father, Al-Atashu قد قتلني وثقل الحديد قد أجهدني. The heaviness of the armor and the weapons has exhausted me. Is there a way, Father, I can get a cup of water? What does Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam say to Ali al-Akbar? وغوثا من أين يأتيك بالماء? Where can I bring you water? Go and fight for a little while. Go back to the battlefield, and soon your grandfather will give you his cup of water. You will drink from it, and you will never experience thirst after that. سهلا يا ابويا طلبتك هاي، لكن يا عقلي ونور عيوني إمنا نجيب لنا شربة الماء والعطاياش مثلك يبس حشاي. الماء يبني منين اجيبه وقلبي مثل قلبك لهيبة. Your request, Ya Ali, is a simple request, but tell me, my son, where can I get you water? Before he returns to the battlefield, Imam al-Hussein tells him to go say goodbye to his mother Layla. He sees her unconscious. Ali al-Akbar sits beside the head of Layla and cries. His tears fall on the cheeks of Layla. Layla opens her eyes and sees her beloved son. He bids farewell to his mother, and Ali returns to the battlefield. He continues to fight. He launches attacks on the enemy, to the point the people of Kufa began screaming, what is he doing to us? They were confused. Ahada Ali al-Akbar Am hada Ali ibn Abi Talib. As Ali al-Akbar alayhi salam is fighting Murrah, a ruthless enemy, stares at Ali. I will bear the sins of all the Arabs if I do not kill him. I will make his father feel the pain of his loss. As Ali al-Akbar alayhi salam is fighting, Murrah stabs Ali al-Akbar in his back with a spear. Then he strikes him with the sword on his head. At that moment it is said, Ali hugs the horse. The enemy strike him with their swords. But where does the horse take him? Instead of taking him to the camp of Hussein, it takes him to the camp of the enemies. So they surround Ali al-Akbar, and they begin striking him. The tradition says they sever his body into pieces. Everyone say with me, Aywa. As it is about to leave, Ali al-Akbar calls, Aba Abdullah, alayka minni salam. Here is my grandfather Rasulullah, who has given me a cup of water, after which I will never experience thirst. He tells you, Ya Abu Abdullah, hurry, there's a cup that is saved for you. What happens to Imam al-Hussein when he hears the call of Ali? The tradition says he was in the tent. Imam al-Hussein shouts in his loudest voice, Wa walada wa aliyah. The women began weeping. He tells them, do not weep. He says later on, you will weep even more. There is more crying that shall be done by you. Abu Abdullah alayhi salam rides his horse. He rushes towards Ali al-Akbar, but on his way to Ali, he keeps on repeating the following words. Waladi Ali, Waladi Ali. Banu Hashim descend with Abu Abdullah. They push the enemy away from Ali al-Akbar. When Imam Hussein gets close to Ali al-Akbar, he does not descend from his horse. What does he do? He jumps off the horse onto the body of Ali al-Akbar. He sees the severed body of Ali. Aywa Husayna, Aywa Imama. He sees the blood of Ali al-Akbar. He places his cheek on the cheek of Ali, his chest on the chest of Ali. It is said that he tells him, Banu Ali, Bunayya Ali. He's hoping to hear one word from Ali al-Akbar, my son Ali. Ali does not respond. Again he tells him, my son Ali. Ali al-Akbar again does not respond. Waladi Ali. على الدنيا بعدك العفا. أما أنت فقد استراحت من هم الدنيا وغمها. Abu Abdullah alayhi salam was so devastated that he was on the brink of dying. He began breathing and sighing as if his soul was about to come out. This is how Abu Abdullah was when he saw Ali al-Akbar. فرمى بنفسه عليه حزينا بفؤاد دام وطرف خفي نادى عنده بني علي يا شبيها خير صفي مخلوط دمك ويا التراب خدك ذملا ومن الشمس ذاب والله حصفات عليك يا شام يا علي يا إمام Imam Hussein tells Banu Hashim, O youth of Banu Hashim, carry Ali al-Akbar, for by Allah I cannot carry him. I do not have the power to carry him. They bring Ali al-Akbar to the camp. Who comes out? Zainab alayha salam comes out of the tent, leading the rest of the women and children. When she sees the body of Ali, Zainab throws herself on the body of her nephew, calling out, Wa ya walada wa ibna akha ya habiba. When Abu Abdullah sees Zainab, he takes her by her hand and he takes her off the body of Ali. And he brings her back to the camp as he says. The tradition says, فَبَكَى الْحُسَيْنُ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامُ رَحْمَةً لِبُكَائِهَا وقال إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. He tells her, Zainab, إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. He tells her, Zainab, because Zainab was his trusted one. How can I bring him to his mother? I fear if Layla sees him, she will die. Ali راح يا زينب قومي سنديني. علي راح يا زينب تعالي وعاونيني everyone. علي راح يا زينب قومي سنديني everyone. علي راح